Welcome to When We Talk podcast, a place where we talk about everything from relationships, marriage, being single, conflict in marriages, conflict in relationships. We talk about it all. This episode is hosted by Kenneth Bonner and Reggie Smith. Welcome again to When We Talk. I am your host, Kenneth Bonner.
And this is the other host, Reggie Smith.
Well, today we want to kind of shift away from the focus of just talking about relationships. We want to kind of shift a little bit towards the single folks. So Reggie's going to start us off with just a thought.
Have you ever heard the term or phrase, good things come to those who wait? Good things do come. There are a lot of benefits that comes to us as we're waiting on specific entities, people, or whatever. But there are also a lot of bad things that might come and interfere with that when you don't wait. So that's what we're going to jump into on today.
So let's start off with the bad, because personal experience of my own is that I've been in relationships to where I jumped in head first. And the problem with that is I didn't allow myself enough time to discover who this person really was outside of the little bit of things that I noticed that we ignore because for whatever reason, could be you so caught into that person's personality that you ignore their bad behaviors, their bad attitudes. And so those things right there, they come up. The longer you wait, the longer you talk to somebody, the more you spend time with somebody, you get to see how they function, how they make decisions, how they spend their money, what their primary goals are. And I think that when you don't wait and you just rush into it because of whatever reason, it could be because you ended up getting somebody pregnant or you got pregnant. That could be one of the reasons that you jump in too quick. But again, the problem is that step should have waited until you really got to know the person. What do you think about that, Reggie?
I agree. When you say jumping in head first, I'm notorious in my past for jumping in head first. There's a reason why you would see on TV shows or commercials when someone would come to the edge of a swimming pool, they would put their pinky toe in or just a little bit of their toe because they were testing the waters. Right. They were testing to see if it was too cold, if it was warm, if it was too hot. And I think a lot of times in life we have dived in because we are leaning to another understanding and we are captivated by our emotions. And I've always said that I believe that emotions cloud your logic and your rationale. And when you're doing that, sometimes you stay in that honeymoon period a little bit longer than what you're supposed to stay into. And you miss the person's true colors. You understand what I'm saying? You miss those other things that are being brought to the table or not being brought to the table because you're so caught up. And sometimes, like you said, you might enter into it because maybe that person may have gotten pregnant, or a lot of times we feel obligated or we feel that we should do it, but we never sit back to take the time to count up the costs.
And see, here's one of the biggest reasons why we jump in head first, because people don't like to be alone.
Exactly. And
loneliness is a big driving factor to a lot of bad relationships. There's a need in the human race that it's innate in us for partnership. We were created, male and female, so that, there can be partnership. The man was not supposed to be alone, so a woman was created for him. And that companionship is a need that everybody has. And so when we're looking for that companionship, we have to be very cognizant of the things that are going on in our life, the mental state we're in, what our focus is on, the things that we have going on. Are we ready for a mate, or are we just trying to satisfy some extra time that we have, because of our time management, or are we looking for a distraction from the reality that we face in life, and so the problem with jumping in relationships head first is that you end up making decisions and then you tie yourself in these relationships long term.
Exactly.
And now you're suffering the consequences from that decision, because once you commit to somebody, then you open up the deals from getting cars in both names, getting bank accounts in both names, getting houses in both names. And then you turn around and realize that wait a minute, I shouldn't have did this. I shouldn't have come this far in this relationship because this is not the person that I see myself with for the rest of my life. So when you make those temporary decisions or those long-term decisions for a temporary moment, then these are the consequences that you have.
Exactly. And you hit it on a point. Biblically, it says it was not in God's plan for man to be alone, which is why he created Eve so that man would not be alone. And I can attest to myself, and I didn't want to admit it. And it's with all of us, we don't like to be alone because there's a certain amount of fear that comes along with that. And I hear my parents, hear my mom and friends saying, Red, you're moving too fast, you're moving too fast, you're moving too fast. Because when you tend to move fast, you tend to miss something. You tend to miss a lot of things. You get on the highway and drive fast, you're going to miss a whole bunch of stuff. But if you take your time, you get to see all those things that you need to see that might prevent you from running into an accident or causing a lifelong crash. I had a situation where I purposely tried to get this one situation out of my mind. It was a period of time for a few years that I don't even count as part of my life because I made a bad decision. I got caught up on the emotion. I got caught up on some other things, and I didn't take the time to count out the cost. The crazy thing about it is that a lot of these bad things that cause a detriment of the relationship, I saw it, but I was still in that honeymoon period, giving the benefit of the doubt that maybe it would change. And it never changed. In fact, it got worse, but I continued to stay in it. And that caused me so much heartache, so much detriment, so much pain, so much regret, so much bitterness, a whole lot of things. And I began to change who I was. And the thing that was why it was so easy to change who I was, because I didn't give myself enough time to find who I was.
And one of the things that you just touched on was that you changed a lot about yourself. And I feel that another reason people stay in those types of situations is because they think they can change other people. And you can't do that. You can't. You can have the expectations to change other folks, but it doesn't always work that way. So in order to avoid a lot of these things, we just encourage you to wait. I mean, I wish I would have waited for my wife. My wife tells me that all the time, that she wished she would have waited for me. Because a lot of times we think that we find people to fill these voids, not realizing on how much we're missing out in the person that God has for us. You get what I'm saying? And so, when you tie yourself to people and then you can't figure out how to get out of that relationship or whatever the case, you stuck for a while. And then you got these attitudes to deal with. You got this baggage, and now you're damaged. So then the person that he has for you, you have to wait a little bit longer because you're not ready for that person. So that's another reason you delay, and another consequence of doing that.
Exactly. I agree with that. And you say that and it brings volumes, because if there are some things I can go back in time and change, I would, but there are some things that I wouldn't have as a benefit of that. But also I think that I wish that I had waited too. I wish that I had waited, but man, I only have enough time, a day, a space to go back and change all of that. But I will say is that the caveat of that is that those bad situations or bad relationships and bad choices, it shaped and made me who I am today.
Agreed.
Now it's kind of, you kind of got to go back and forth with it. Who I am today, if I was that other person then in this current relationship, would that have worked? Because now when you enter into, at our age, you enter into another relationship, you're shaped and forged in certain things. Your tolerance is different. Your patience is different. You view things a lot differently than what you did before. So I think the caveat is that I learned a lot from it, and I use it as my arsenal and my tools to help me become a better person, as well as to also be the better person in the relationship.
And you can do that. I strongly agree that you can. We learned a lot of things from our past and past relationships. And I agree that with everything that I've been through in relationships prior to my wife, it has helped me to be a better person. It has helped me to do things a lot different. But here's the deal. Here's a question that a lot of single people have. How much time do you invest in somebody that you're dating? How do you know that this is the one that you should be with? That's a real question that a lot of people have. because here we have people dating and they're waiting and trusting God for a person. And then somebody comes along, and then they spend a lot of time with this person just to learn that this wasn't the one. And then they're like, okay, God, you sent this man my way. Not necessarily. You just went after something that looked like the real thing, but I'm asking you though, Reggie, what do you think though, man? I mean, how long do you invest time in someone that you're dating before you determine that this person is the one? How far do you go in a relationship?
Man, that's an age-old question. Someone just asked me that question last week, and my thing was, I think it's something to a point to where you'll know something down on the inside lets you know and lets you click. But my thing on that is that I've heard people who've been married for several years, for decades or whatever, and they said, something, I just knew. It's something that I just felt on the inside of me. But if I'm a young person and, we're in this society now where it's the microwave type generation where no one wants to take the time to cook or prepare, do anything. It's put in the microwave, do a drive-through and keep it moving. How do you convey that over to a younger person talking about weight? Today's younger generation really don't believe or understand the term of weight. They have no clue. The only thing that I could possibly say is that there should be something on the inside that clicks on inside of you that lets you know that this is it. This is the person that I'm supposed to be with. Now, they always use all these other different terms. I don't know. But something should resonate in your spirit. There should be a peace and a calm before you actually come together. And I'm pretty sure a lot of us can honestly say before we made that commitment, we had a lot of question marks in our head, but we went on and went into the relationship anyway. You understand what I'm saying? But I think that when you go into a relationship, you're still going to have a lot of a doubt. I mean, it just comes with it because you're entering into a realm that you're not familiar with. But I would say is that as you enter into that relationship, when those question marks and those exclamation points start to diminish, that might be where you know that this is it. But if you're going into the relationship and those question marks that are hovering over your head and those exclamation points are starting to increase, then you might need to pump your brakes and be like, something. if it's increasing now and it hasn't changed now, there's a strong possibility that it's not going to change later on down the line.
I agree with that. But here's my other perspective on that topic. I feel that we choose people based on the circumstances we're in life. There's not too many people out here that choose people based on their own worth. And when you're trying to fill a void just because you don't want to be alone, then you can end up choosing just about anything. And what happens is when you get entangled with somebody that's not on the same level of your worth and somebody that doesn't understand your worth, you're bound to be mishandled. That relationship is bound to end. And then you look in the mirror one day and say, I lost my value. I don't know who I am. I don't know my worth. Mm-hmm. And the problem began to get greater and greater and greater because now not only do you not know who you are, you don't know your worth, but now you're sitting here trying to figure out ways to make this relationship work. You're trying to force fit it. It's like taking the wrong key and trying to unlock a treasure box and you end up breaking the key because it wasn't meant to fit that lock. And every person that you come across is not the person that you should tie to yourself. And what I'm basically saying is that you really have to take your time and pay attention to the signs. The way I knew that my wife was my wife is, of course, I had about 10 prophetic words about the wife that God has for me. But I was actually talking to somebody, kind of dating somebody, sort of right before my wife and I started dating. And a prophetic word that came to me that it was really profound. And this is just through a close friend that I didn't even share that I was dating anybody at the time. And the word was, God said, the one you're dating is not the one. If you wait, the one that he has for you is going to blow your mind. That right there alone didn't take me long. I went just like quick. I was running like a horse in a Kentucky Derby trying to break that thing off. You know what I'm saying? And so I broke the relationship off. Needless to say that it's been great. It's been great. You know, this marriage that I'm in with my wife is so fulfilling. It's so rewarding. And I know her worth. She knows my worth. And we push each other towards our worth to do things to enhance our worth. But imagine if I wouldn't have listened, if I wouldn't have heeded the word that God sent. If I would have just stayed in that relationship, do you know I either could have delayed or missed out on this blessing? You get what I'm saying? And so I feel like for a person to know that, you know, this is the person that they should be, you'll know signs. There's a lot of signs.
I think that you made a point about value. And I posted on my Facebook page that if you are with someone and they don't add value to your life or make you better in any type of way, that should be the number one sign. That should be a key sign. If I'm not getting better, I'm not getting stronger, the benefits of the relationship is not helping me at all. In fact, it's causing a detriment, and we're not even fully vested in a relationship. That should be a sign. You know what I'm saying? I'm more miserable and depressed with you, you know, than I would, rather than I should be happy, you know, in this. You know, now I will say this: relationships, you know, they're going to have their peaks and their valleys. You know, you're going to have issues in relationship. That it just comes with it because you're dealing with two individuals who may have a different mindset, their characteristics, their thought process might be different. But if you're not making me better, meaning that you're not helping me strengthen my strengths and also capitalize on my weakness, not take advantage of my weaknesses, but capitalize on my weaknesses to where we have a balance, that should be one sign that you have to sit back and look at. You'd be like, you know something, every time I see you, I'm upset, or every time I see you, something on the inside of me just gets agitated. If that's continuing to be your norm, that should be one of the signs you need to sit back and be like, you know, I don't need to be in this relationship. Maybe I need to pull back a little bit, pump my brakes, and reevaluate.
Right, I agree. And one of the biggest things that we need to pay attention to is the character of people. You know, are they people of integrity? Are they open and honest about a lot of the things that they have going on in their life? You know, and then when they do tell you things that they have going on in their life, you have to count up the cost to see if this is something that you can deal with in a relationship, if this is something that you can handle if these situations came about. Because a lot of times we enter into relationships and we make this decision, yes, this is the one, but then you really find out a lot of things about people as the relationship progresses. Yeah. And most of the things that you find out about these people are things that they told you up front. You just ignored it. Right. Because you didn't think it was something that could be easily handled, or you felt like, okay, it doesn't matter if this changed. We're good. We can handle this. We can handle that. But did you really sit and just dissect the consequences of those issues, or their issues, or how detrimental they would be, or how much they would affect the relationship? Did you really weigh those options out? Because if you didn't weigh it, you can't get in a relationship with somebody and now you're like, yeah, about that. You know, you can't bring those issues up. So I really feel like in order for you to know that this person is the person for you, you know, we're men of faith, you know, we're believers in Jesus Christ. You know, that's the foundation of every relationship that I have, you know, and so I prayed about it. I prayed about my wife. You know, when I was not trying to get married, you know, I wasn't even looking for a wife, but then I started getting these prophetic words. And so what happened for me is when I started getting these prophetic words about a wife, that told me that it's God's timing. This is what God has for me. And because of those prophetic words, and I started seeking the Lord, I also picked up a few books and started studying, because I've been divorced before and I didn't want to make that mistake again, because I wanted to say, okay, God, if this is what you're preparing me for, I want to make sure that when I meet her, that I'm ready for her. And so me doing the studies and reading and giving myself a different perspective on marriage, giving myself a different perspective on relationship actually helped me to know what I was looking for and what I was not looking for.
I think that's awesome. As far as me, as far as I'm concerned, this is something that I used to do all the time. Is that because I'm a therapist by trade, it's just in my nature, it's in my blood. But I would literally, after having conversations with individuals, I would sit down and go home and take time out of my day to weigh the pros and cons. I did. I would put the good points and the bad points. Well, she said this. How do I feel about that? And, sometimes the pros outweigh the cons or vice versa. But when it came to a point to where my cons outweighed my pros, I don't care how good she looked, how fine she was, what type of hair she was, the type of job. I was like, something I can't do that. But what I would do is I would turn around and give the benefit of the doubt and go back and be like, well, maybe if I can strike up a conversation and do some things to add a little bit more pros to those cons, that, it would balance itself out. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. But what I learned is I would, even when I wasn't where I am at, I would have conversations with the Lord, and I would tell the Lord what I wanted. I went upon the make your request known unto the Lord. So I will make my request known unto the Lord. Lo and behold, God heard my request and he gave me what I wanted. But those things that he gave me was not the things that I really wanted. And then I would hear a voice say, well, that's what you asked for. So then what happened was, in this relationship, I was very specific. I tell people all the time, you need to be specific with God. God deals in specificity. You understand what I'm saying? So I was very specific. I told the Lord the height, her color, her feet, her hair, different things. I was very specific. And what I have right now is because I was very specific as far as what I told him. Now, in the other situations, I did ask him for certain things, but I wasn't specific because I got it. I'm like, okay, well, I wanted it, but that's not what I really, really wanted. So when I made my request and I was very, very specific, that's what I got. So I would tell anyone, another thing I would tell young people is that for those that have a relationship with the Lord, be very, very careful what you ask for. And that's just a worldly thing. Be careful what you ask for because you just might get what you ask for. Be careful what you ask for and be specific with God. Write it all down. The Bible says write the vision down and make it plain. Make it plain. God, I want this, I want this, I want that. I don't want this. You know how I balance it out, talk to the Lord and give it to the Lord and let God fix it out and work it out. And while God is working it out, you sit back and chill and just wait until it all comes to fruition and then you go from there.
I agree with that. I believe that waiting is definitely important. We talked about a lot of things that consequences that come when you don't wait. So some of the benefits of waiting is, like Reggie said, that you can be specific with God. And if you have patience to wait on what he has, then he'll give you the desires of your heart. However, you want to make sure that you're asking with the right intention, and then when you ask God with the right intention of fulfilling his purpose for your life and the marriage, then God will really show up. Because I did the same thing when I started getting the prophetic words. The first thing I said to God was like, okay, you funny, because I was like, I'm not trying to get married. But
I remember that.
When I saw my wife and I met my wife and I felt the connection that was prophesied to me, it was inevitable, that yes, this is it. This is definitely, the one. And so prior to that, when I got those prophetic words, I was being specific. One of the things I asked for was somebody that was into fitness, and somebody that really can cook, of course, and that really, just caring, and would value the ministry that God's given me. And sure enough, I get every bit an ounce of my wife's workouts at 4:30 in the morning, right. 4:50, whatever time she wants to get up. I can't argue. I have to get up. Some days I try to, play like I'm tired, but, and her words are, you can stay in that bed if you want to and be unhealthy. You know what I'm saying? So, that's that be careful what you wish for thing. But on the other note, I'm really grateful for waiting. Because like I said about the situation earlier, I could have tied myself to somebody that was not a part of God's plan. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the enemy will send distractions, will send people that look like the real thing in your path. And they're really not. Yeah. They're not. They look like the real thing. They smell like the real thing. They act like the real thing. But in actuality, it's just a smoke screen to keep you from what he has purpose for you.
Exactly. The Bible says that you have not because you ask not. And when you ask amiss, meaning that you're asking for the wrong motives. You're asking for the wrong intentions. But I think, too, that a couple of things, and these are things that we can touch on in a later show, but there are a couple of benefits to waiting. Waiting reveals true motives.
Exactly.
When you wait, the true motives of why this person is in your life will be revealed. Also, I think that priorities become clear in a relationship. When you wait, you start to see what's a priority and what's not a priority. When you jump into a relationship head first, everything's a priority. Everything is urgent. My needs need to be met. You know what I'm saying? You're very, very selfish. But when you sit back and you take the time, you start to see the purpose, you start to see the plan, you start to see the motives, and the priorities will also become clear. And let me say this, is that while you're waiting, find yourself. Find who you are. Find what makes you tick. Find the things that you love and that you like. And get all that stuff together. Put it in, check it out, look into it, research it or whatever like that. Because before you can jump into a relationship to make someone else whole, to make the relationship whole, you have to be somewhat whole yourself. You can't go into a relationship with all that residue and all that baggage, because it's going to set you back years instead of you progressing forward.
I agree with that 100%. And you have to discover you, because if you fall in love with you first, you can fall in love with the person that God has for you. And I think that a lot of people lose themselves. They lose falling in love with themselves, or the focus of themselves, because they get in relationships. It's okay to focus on you in a relationship. You know, it's okay to do that. You know, you have to keep yourself up. People appreciate those that keep themselves up. And one of the things that I do want to add to what Reggie was saying is that, you know, when you're looking for a partner, look for somebody with value, somebody that compliments you, because you'll never be able to find somebody that completes you. That's God's job. You know, but look for somebody that compliments you. You know, if you're waiting on somebody that's causing you to lower your standards, don't invest your time in that.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because if you have to lose everything of who you are for this relationship, and the relationship doesn't give you anything in return, then you have to really reevaluate that. Is it worth it? You know, because a lot of people spend time and years in relationships hoping, like Reggie said earlier, that people would change, but they end up changing themselves. They lose their value. They lose their hope. They lose their purpose. You need to partner with somebody that has a vision for the relationship, a vision of where you all are going. And I'm going to go ahead and let Reggie go ahead and jump in on this, because, you know, he's a man of vision.
Oh. I would just say that it comes down at the end of the day to who you are, and also who you allow God to be in your life. And everything is centered around timing. You know, one thing that as Christians we have an issue is that, and this is something else, is that we want God to operate on our time. God doesn't operate on our time. There's a difference. There's Chronos and then there's Kairos. Kairos is God's timing. Chronos is our timing. God doesn't operate on Chronos time. He operates on Kairos time, his timing. So if we sit back and we wait on the timing of the Lord, and while we're waiting on the timing of the Lord, we begin to see who we are, understand who we are. Things will become clear. And let me say this before we get ready to close. Man, this might be a topic for another time. It is the man's responsibility to find the woman.
Wow.
Women are going out here looking for men. No, that's not how it should be. The woman should be put herself in position to be found. That man has become a little bit lazy, and they're letting the women do all the work. Women do enough. Our job should be to go out and find that woman. Find her. You know what I'm saying? Look for her. You know what I'm saying? Have a plan and a purpose for what you want, because it's getting out of context, and that's the main issue in itself.
Yep. And in closing, I just want to go ahead and give this scripture. It's in Isaiah 40:31. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. That's in the King James Version. But that scripture alone tells you that if you wait on God, he will strengthen you. He'll keep you from being weary. He'll walk with you. And you won't go faint, because you're riding on the strength of the Lord. So until next time,
I'm Reggie Smith.
This is Kenneth Bonner.
Keep your head up, keep God first, and keep it moving.